There's one thing I wanted to change about the collisions, and it's not necessary and you probably won't need it, but you might, so I'll show you. So one disadvantage that we have here is that we set the X velocity to 0. If there's a collision, basically stop moving, you hit a wall, don't keep going fast even after you hit the wall. You hit the wall, so you should stop, right? Okay, but there's another thing, and it's that you move right here in this script, and it's not. Let's say you want multiple objects to check for collision with. Okay, so one way you could go about it is instead of having place meeting like this, you could replace it. Yeah, I guess that would be the best solution. You know what? I was gonna do something and then I realized there's a simpler way. So I'm gonna show you the simpler way. You'll make your own place meeting basically. Place meeting many, and I think I've done this before because I remember something like this. So the argument you're gonna pass in is x. The other argument you're gonna pass in is y, and then you're gonna pass as many objects as you want. So I'm gonna say object like this, the star, and then I'll put it again. Basically, those are um, optionals. You actually can have as many as you want, but I'll put 2 because I'm not sure how to write it. But basically, what this is gonna do is I'll do it and then I'll explain it afterwards. No, actually, I'm gonna make this mirror. And this is not going to be 0, this is going to be 2 because argument 0 and 1 or x and y. So we're going to start with argument 2. Um, all I need to do is, well, I don't need this. Some people say that you should only have one return statement in the script. Um, I understand the argument, but sometimes it seems easier to just have a few return statements. So here's what this is gonna do. This is gonna replace the normal place meeting function, and what you can do with it is to pass in multiple objects, and you can have as many as you want. I don't think you can actually have as many as you want. Um, yeah, I don't think you can, but maybe you could. And you could change this and replace it with a list of objects. So maybe you only want to check. Um, yeah, that would probably be better, but I'll leave it like this for now. So what this is gonna do, you're basically gonna be able to do place meeting and then have X, Y, and then object player maybe, object enemy maybe, object wall, object invisible wall. You're gonna be able to do this. And then you can take whatever movement script, whatever movement script you're using, and put this in it instead. So you won't have to change your code. You'll be able to use any code that you want and just replace it with place meeting many with this in it, and it would work. So yeah, that's and we're gonna test it out, obviously, because I could have made a mistake. Who knows? So I'll make another type of object, object barrier, and object player barrier. Maybe you want all the other entities to be able to go many places, but you want some type of limit for the player. I'll make a sprite just so I can see it. I hope did I? Yes, okay. I started the recording. That would it would have sucked if I hadn't started recording. Um, yeah. So, oops. Grab a rectangle, I guess. I'll make this. Maybe I'll make it transparent. And can I override the color? Is there a setting for that? Seems there isn't, so I guess I'll delete this and put this, and I guess I'll just put okay, so now we have a sprite for the player barrier, and we'll go in the room. We need to reduce this grid 16, 16. So maybe you don't want the player to get out of the map. There are better ways to do this, but this would be one way to go about it. And because it's an object, like walls, you'll know it will behave exactly the same way. So you don't need to write some type of new code that when you get out of the screen, go back inside the screen. Then don't forget to remove the velocity, set x value and y value to 0. Then don't forget to do this other thing. Maybe you have a bunch of things that happen when you hit a wall, and that's what you want to happen when you try to go out of the map. So that's one reason to use it. But a better reason is, let's say you have a bee enemy, and the bee enemy is big, and it flies, and it moves around in a weird way, and sometimes it gets stuck to a wall. Then what you could do is come here and fill in the places that the bee gets stuck in, just so that the boss bee thing or the flying enemy you have doesn't get stuck to walls. So it's going to bounce back and sting the center. And so that's one way you could use it theoretically. or maybe you want the humans to be able to go through normal rooms, but you want the cat to go through a vent to change rooms, maybe. Or sometimes there's a type of path that you want for an entity and not for another. Maybe the player can swim, but maybe cats can't go in the water. So that would be another way to do it. So sometimes it's useful to have different objects for your collisions. And now we're going to test it out. I'm going to need to change my D script, and that's why I think it might be better to use a list instead of this, because let's say I change the script so that we can have another object here, right? Well, it might cause a problem. It might cause a problem because that means that every time I use this, I need to precise at the top if there's another object or not. And if there isn't, then okay, what do I do then? Maybe. So my point is, if you can just pass the list like this, objects to check for, then it's all simpler, makes the code easier. So I guess I'm gonna do that. Am I gonna do that? I won't. I'll pass the extra argument, and um, yeah, I'm thinking because there's always there's always a trade-off. Let me close the window right now because there's a dog. If it's a nice dog, but it's making me lose focus. Okay, I'll just go with two objects for now, just to make things simpler, because we need to test it first, because if it's not working, then what's the point in changing it, right? So those are the only two place meetings that we have in the script, so I'll replace it with place meeting many. If you know that there's only one specific barrier for your entities, and only sometimes, then you can just pass in another variable, which could be, oh, second wall, or entity barrier, maybe. So that's one way to go about it. To have entity barrier, and you could set it to no one if you wanted to. So we could go in the player object, create event, entity barrier equals to object barrier, object player barrier, and then you won't need to pass in an argument, but you will need all your objects have something written here, but it could be no one and it will work, I'm pretty sure. So that means there's no second barrier, only check for the walls, and that's it. So we'll set entity barrier, and let's see if I made a mistake. This still works, and yeah, it works. Oh, nope, I forgot to change for the y-axis. So entity barrier, this should be called entity barrier like this, because that's the naming convention I've been using so far in this project. So I'm gonna change that right now, and I'll go change this in the player code as well. Still recording. So now it should be working. So if you only need two type of objects, this is a good way. So let's say I have some weird enemy like I was talking about earlier. So enemy, or maybe I want enemies to start outside of the map, but I want them to come towards the inside of the map, right? Maybe that's what I want. So we'll make some type of circular monster, maybe some blue monster with red eyes. Well, I can't spend too much time on this because it's gonna take long. Here, let's make them nasty looking. I picked the worst colors ever. That's a little bit better. Uh, yeah, let's test this out. Let's make an enemy, and let's make him. Well, I'm gonna need Xvel and Yvel, so and let's make it go towards the player. The reason I use instant nearest is because maybe I want to change this later. Maybe I wanted to change some monster. Maybe I want to have multiple players in the game. Maybe I want local co-op. I don't know. So that's the reason I'm doing that, but it's not necessary. And then add uh, velocity. That's gonna be 1, and that's gonna be towards facing. And I should add the maximum velocity in this script, right? That's what I realize now by making another enemy. Is in the player, I take care of the maximum speed somewhere. Where do I take care of that? Velocity here. Do I even take care of the maximum speed? Yes, okay. It's instead of being passed in, I should pass it in. Yep. This is gonna make things a lot easier. Okay, so I'm adding in max speed. I was wrong, I'm using this naming convention. So when I switched up, I screwed up. So I'm going to change it again. Okay, back to the enemy. Let's make it have proper sprite. And the maximum speed is going to be 4. And what else do we need to do? Yeah, reduce the speed if we're trying to do. what we're always going to be trying to do. So okay, so the position. Actually, we'll make this too strong. So it's going to be at the top left corner of the map. Actually, I'll place it in the room. So this should be working. Let's try it. I'll put the enemy player outside. And wait, I don't even have collisions. Okay, let's go back here. Where do I move? Oh, that's it? Okay, not complicated. I have a script for it, so that's why scripts and functions are useful. After everything's done, try to move. And let's see what happens. Oh, I forgot to change to make him look at the player. And max speed, let's set before we reading it. So there's a problem in my script. Aha. And this should be called this. Well, I use multiple naming conventions apparently, so I guess good thing it's a tutorial and not a long-term project because I messed up in many places. Okay, so let's see what happens. Oh, it's gonna crash because I forgot to do this exactly. The entity barrier, forgot to set that up. So entity, oops, and this should work. Well, it did work, and it's moving pretty fast. I'll slow it down, but as you saw, it didn't have a problem with passing through the barrier. But it's not gonna pass through walls. At least it shouldn't. Yep, it hits the walls, so that's working. But it doesn't hit the border of the map. So that's useful if you need a lot of objects that can only pass through for some people, but not anybody else. And I would tend to change it for a list. So instead of having um, first of all, get back to the proper naming convention. Instead of having entity barrier, I would have entity barriers. Instead of the one to be -1, because that's how the task structures usually work, with -1 instead of no one. I will change this in the player as well. Entity barriers. Um, it's gonna be yes list create. We have to be careful with this because with data structures, you need to remember to delete them later. Because if you don't, you get memory leaks. And memory leaks is basically when you have something somewhere that no variable, no instance, nothing remembers that it exists. So you have to be careful with that. So with this here, if you do this, immediately, either right afterwards, if it's temporary, ds ds list destroy entity barriers. You do this as soon as possible. You can even write it before you even create the list to make sure you don't forget it, and then put it somewhere that is relevant. So it can be immediately after. If this happens all in the step event or in the script, and then you need to remove it, you don't need it anymore, then destroy it right away. But if not, you can go in the cleanup event for this. This is where entity barriers. And something else that you could do, and for enemy objects, that's what you probably should do, is to have a global list or global map with the list of objects that so basically one global list for one object instead of having one local list for every instance of an object. So basically try to have one data structure that is used by as many instances as possible if you can. Um, Alternatively, we don't need this. If we want to make it simpler and safer, we can use an array, and that would be a good time for that. Um, so let's do this. And we might have, maybe you want to use up to three different objects for collisions. So, and then you set this to no one. Um, okay, you have a few ways to do it. If you want to do it without repeating yourself, you say for loop equals to the last coordinate that you want. Sorry, two. If you want three objects, you need to put it into y bigger than or equal to 0, y minus minus. That will be one way to go about it, and you only need to write it once. So those are all the extra objects, and the difference between an array and the data structure in the GameMaker is those will be removed automatically if you destroy the instance, so there's no risk of a memory leak if you do it this way. At least from my understanding, I guess I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's it's basically a type of variable, but that can have multiple variables. So now all of these are going to be set to no one, and then if you want to change it, you can do this. You can say 0 equals object player barrier. So you also could do it manually if you're only using a few objects. You could say 0 equals no one, 1 equals no one. Could do it this way, it's easier to read. But if you have 10 different objects, but I don't know why you would do 10 different objects, but maybe you do, then the for loop is going to be easier to do this whole thing with. Another thing you can do that's easier to read as well. So you can have as many as you want and change them, and you don't need to change the number in here. So that's probably one of the best ways to go about it. So that's the way I'm going to use. Now for the player, I only need one, so the array will only have one index. And yeah, for the enemy, I'm gonna have one index as well because I'm gonna need one, but I'll set it to no one. So okay, so now that this is done, we need to change the place moving menu again. So instead of this, I put objects plural because it's an array. It could be a list, but I won't precise that in here. And actually, we don't pass in anything because it's a variable that is stored in the instance basically. Now I is going to be equal to 0 again, and array length 1D entity barriers. So if there's only one in there, it's gonna, well, it's only gonna test it once, and if it's no one, it's gonna ignore it because place meeting is made in a way that if you pass in no one as an object, it just won't check it. So you don't need to do yourself if no one exit or ignore or whatever. You don't need to do it. It does it automatically. So now, theoretically, it should still work just like before, but with more flexibility. Uh, what did that? Um, oh, I get it. And I'll check the script while I'm at it. This needs the proper spelling and with mass because of notable barriers. I forgot that as well. In this. One thing I don't really like about GameMaker Studio 2 is that all the panels, you basically have to drag them first if you want to read properly what's written. Oops. Okay, and I still didn't. Oh yeah, yeah. Initially, I was gonna only affect. My initial plan was to instead of moving Y directly, to first handle to let the velocity be normal, but then it would have caused a bunch of other problems because just wouldn't have been as effective as this. So I changed my mind and decided to do it this way, and I think this code is better than the collision code I had before. So I'll probably take this, and this is going to replace my collision code in all my new projects and my old projects as well. So yeah, I think I did a pretty good job with this collision code. Okay, so let's test this out. So that still works for this. Oh, I don't collide with walls, and it doesn't either. So there is a bug with my code. Let's find out what it is. So, okay, in the player, when we move, we pass in xvel and yvel, so far, so good. Then here we go with, we pass xvel to move x script, and we pass yvel to move y script. So far, so good. Um, okay, first problem is I don't need this extra parameter because we're using we could pass the array as a parameter. We could. So again, if you really needed more RAM for some reason because you use so many instances, instead of having the entity barrier being an instance variable, you could have it be some type of global array or something and pass it in. It would work, and it could also make it more obvious what you're doing. But I'm leaving it here for now because I think it's decent enough, but usually you'd want to make it more obvious what's happening. But I'm doing the same thing with walls, so I think it's okay. I think it's decent enough. So okay, so what would the bug be? We're checking for collision with the object solid as well. So what's going on? Why isn't it? Why can't I hit anything? Because that's weird. So ah, I'm not even checking for the normal object. So that's an easy fix. That's an easy fix. Instead of having just this, the first one is going to be object solid. Second one is going to be object barrier. and I'm gonna go do the same thing for the enemy. It's gonna be no one, it's gonna be object solid. So all the entities will have their own list, well, not their list, their array of objects it needs to collide with. So now it should work. And we're not repeating ourselves a lot. We're not repeating ourselves at all. So this works. Oh yeah, here's a disadvantage of making the player look towards where he's going is if you hit a wall, then that changes. So now I might be looking right. Maybe I'm going in this angle. Now I'm looking completely right. So, but I think it's good for monsters if you want to know which way monsters are going. That's what happens with low friction. It looks like it's a fly. Well, it was the idea in the beginning, right? I wanted to make some type of fly thing. So that's kind of how it's behaving. So yeah, okay. Player can't hit this, the enemy can. So far so good. And what else did I want to change about movement? Now you have a way to have way. That's weird. What's happening? I was passing in object solid here. So what's going on? What was it? Okay, I just didn't have a place meeting for object solid. I guess this is better anyway because we avoid repeating, right? So instead of object solid, we're okay. So I have two options. I can pass in entity barriers from the very beginning with SCR move, which would be a good idea, or I can not pass it at all because why do so? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it from the very beginning just so that it's more readable. So and that's the type of thing that when you have it working that well, you don't need to write it ever again because it's just written so well. So I don't think I'll be writing collision code for a very long time after this is done. And I don't think you will be either, but at least we'll have learned a lot about the process because that's not simple at all. That collision code is not simple at all. So if you're understanding everything I've done or you're starting to understand it, that's going to help you a lot with whatever problem you come across. So, and you also see my thought process. So I think that's pretty good. Collision objects. And then right here, um, I'll put it here. I think it's close enough to. Oops. I think it's close enough to the beginning of the script so that you can see what you're doing and maybe you need to modify it, but at the same time you don't need to write it every time you write the movement code. So I think that's a decent compromise. And what's there? Number of arguments expected, one got two. Yeah, that's because I didn't modify this one yet. So okay, so this should work. Let's check if it does. One advantage of having the facing direction of the player works like this for enemies. If the enemy did the same thing, is if you hit a wall, then you start looking the direction you're going. So it might look like it's on purpose instead of looking at the wall and walking to the right. It's gonna look weird, but it might make bugs look a bit less like bugs because of that. Might look like the entity is trying to do it. So, okay, so this is working. So that's pretty good code, and the reason I passed that in was um, no longer necessary. So I guess I can just remove that. Normally, show message you're not supposed to use it when the for the final game. You use it when you're programming in case you see something. But I don't need this anymore. I can go back to using argument 0 and argument 1, which is good, which is very good news because you have to do a check of how many arguments have been passed in if you don't use just argument 0 and argument 1. If you use those, then GameMaker knows that there's supposed to be only 2 arguments in total. And if there aren't, if you're passing less, if you're passing more, the game just won't compile. So that prevents a lot of bugs in the long run. So that's pretty good. And and why do I pass in conditional objects if I'm using it in the last thing? So I'm gonna need to add um, I'm gonna need to add this to place meeting menu. Because right now it acts as if we were only passing one argument. So I guess I was wrong. If you pass more arguments than you need, it doesn't crash. It doesn't tell you. That kind of sucks because that would have been useful. But it's okay because I figured out there was this bug here. So the disadvantage of making things more flexible, so for example being able to use multiple objects, is it adds a little bit of overhead, but for something like collisions, I don't think it really matters because going through all the objects and checking for collisions is gonna take a lot more resources than just doing a for loop. So I'm not worried about that. Okay, so now we pass in this and this, and it should work again. It does. So everything is working as intended. Oh yeah, talking about, remember I said maybe placing blocks so that the enemy doesn't get stuck in weird corners? For a game that needs to be simple, it can be useful because you don't really want the... I'll make a better environment and we're gonna test it out. I'll give you an example. I'll make another solid object enemy barrier. I'll make another sprite. I will change a bunch of stuff. Take a light blue color and I'll make a knee for enemy. Alright, so well, okay, that's gonna be the enemy barrier. I'm gonna go back to the room and I'm gonna change a bit the way the walls are set up. So maybe the player can go hide here and you don't really want um, the thing to get stuck in it for some reason. Maybe that's a hiding spot. Maybe it's some bushes. Who knows? But you have something here that's only for the player to go, and you don't want the enemy to be able to go there. So I'll try to really make something that we can get stuck on, so that we can really see the advantage of this type of stuff. Okay, so we're gonna test this out without the, well, I'll place the barrier objects right away. Yeah, you can save objects by just, when you know you can have one object and stretch it out and make it work for different situations, go right ahead. I want this to be like a vent, right? I talked about vents before, where a cat can go through a vent. Maybe that would be it. And yeah, okay, let's say that's what we have. And we don't want the enemy to get stuck in those spots. And we don't want to do complex pathfinding. Maybe you just want a million flies flying around super fast and they keep getting stuck, but you don't want that. One thing, I made the subject not visible because yes, don't see it. Um, wait, I should put a bunch more flies, but let's test it. So let's say the player goes here, that goes here. Sometimes it's gonna get stuck. Right now it's not getting stuck. Maybe I didn't make it that easy to get stuck in. It would get stuck if it had higher acceleration and lower friction. So and the acceleration is going to be 5. The maximum speed is going to be 2. And let's make it, this is going to become a function, draw sprite facing. Draw self facing. Run the player event. Here we go. Now let's try it. I probably should have put a dozen more flies. Yeah, now it gets stuck. So that's a good example of what I was talking about. Of maybe you just want a very simple AI, but it keeps getting stuck. So it doesn't get stuck that often again, but maybe I haven't used the best enemy as an example. I'll go put it, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. So let's put a bunch more. Oh yeah, another advantage is if you want a bunch of enemies, you're really gonna start to want to avoid pathfinding because it costs a lot. So you want it to be as simple as possible for the enemies to find you. Well, that's scary. It's kind of similar to the first game I made, which I made using Tom Francis' tutorial, make a game with no experience. Reminds me of that. Okay, so now, yeah, again, it's not obvious enough, but I think I wasted a bit of time doing an example that you were probably understanding already. Um, but since I'm here, Yeah, okay, so they can't get to me. I'm in the bushes, or I'm in the vent or something. They can't come here. Well, since we're talking about movement, the next video is going to be about soft collisions because they all group together, right? And that's not good. Try to get me, try to get me. So yeah, you can use this for that. Maybe you have a simple AI and you don't want it to get stuck somewhere. That's one use you have for it. Maybe there are objects that only the player can walk through. Maybe only the player can go through doors, and you put this here so that they can't. Maybe there's lava, but the player can walk on lava. Maybe not lava. That was a bad example. Just kill the enemies that walk on it, and you'll be fine. Also, again, if you have a simple AI and you don't want to code in pathfinding and make the enemies avoid the lava, just put a wall there and they will avoid it. They won't be able to get in the lava. So I guess that's one way to go about it. I think it works better for random movement because if you're really trying to follow the player, it's going to be more obvious that you're not going through there. But there are ways to use uh, multiple objects for collision, and I thought it was important to show. And yeah, but you always need a way to pass in the objects. So one way is just put all the objects one by one. Another way would be a list, but there are disadvantages to lists, which is if you have a bunch of instances with lists and you forget to delete them, memory leaks. Arrays are usually safe, unless I'm wrong and I made a mistake, but I don't think so. And yeah, so now you have movement that is super smooth. You do a check first before doing this whole thing because here you call place meeting a bunch of times. Here you call it just once. So if there's no collision to be made at all, just ignore the rest. If you're not even moving, ignore the rest. Um, and you could probably put these two in the same statement. If you're not moving or you're not gonna hit anything, quit. And but I'll keep them separate. If you hit something, reset the velocity to 0 and leave. Yeah, exit would have given the same result here as break, but break is for loops, and exit quits the whole thing. Maybe I would want something else here to happen. So this video is probably way too long again. Um, Feel free to set the speed to 1.5 in my next videos if it gets too long because yeah. Um, Next is probably going to be proper deceleration, maybe something else. But I think I really went through a lot of collision code now. Tile collisions would be a great thing to teach as well, especially line collisions with tiles because that's harder to do. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty good. Soft collisions would be next. So that's it for this video. I don't know how long it took, probably way too long again. Um, but I'm sure it was worth it, and I'll put the code in the description, so you'll be able to use this code. But I hope you've learned a lot doing it, and I literally made it in front of you. So I think the advantage here is that you saw my thought process, and I'm sure that will help a lot of people. At least I hope. So yeah, see ya.